My name's Kevin, and this is the Bible Artist Podcast, and we will be discussing both the House of David, episode 8, and the Chosen season 5, episodes 3 to 5. This is an amazing season to be a fan of Bible shows and to be, having two really high quality shows out there that we can discuss and even kind of look at in conjunction with each other and discuss some of the themes that you can see across both shows. Even though they aren't from the same creative teams, they can still enlighten some of the same ideas that are from Scripture. So we'll be discussing some shared things as well, but we'll also be kind of going through each of these individual stories and discussing what we thought about them, some of the different character story arcs, things like that. And definitely, if you have any questions, any comments, any things about these shows that you want to discuss, please leave thoughts in the comments. We would love to be interacting with you as you are present with us so that we can have this be a more collaborative environment. But before we get too far, let me introduce my co-hosts here. So I've got my friends Victor and Kyle. Guys, say hi.
Hey.
Victor and Kyle. We are going to, once again, we'll start out with the Chosen, episodes 3 to 5, and then we'll end on House of David, the season finale for the show. So let's just start with our thoughts on the Chosen season 5, part 2. So that's like episodes 3 to 5, which just came out last Thursday. I'd be curious to hear. We haven't discussed this at all. No like green room talk or anything. So this is my first time hearing your guys' impressions. Victor, do you want to share first?
Sure. I'm just gonna say it's been kind of a mixed bag for me as an experience. The show's still incredibly well produced. I think it's just it's kind of like one of the things that we kind of were talking about from the very first time you and I, Kevin, were talking about faith-based media, is that what's that line between how much fidelity do you have for the source material versus how much do you prioritize the form of a TV show or a movie or whatever the entertainment form is. And right now I'm feeling the tension between the two different needs that both of those things want, and it just feels to me like Scripture is beating out entertainment or the way that a TV show feels. It just it just feels like we're really kind of bloated, and it's kind of struggling to fit all of this stuff in here and to line stuff up with Scripture. And it's incredibly important. They're getting all of the Scripture in there, but I think for me it's coming at the expense of the flow of what a TV show experience feels like. That's my overall view of
that's
the whole
interesting,
season so far.
A lot of people will attack the Chosen for not being biblical enough, or why are they changing all this stuff? But the point it sounds like you're making is you feel like by this, and this is kind of unique to this season, I feel like the amount of like the density of Scripture per episode for this season, I think, is much higher than in other seasons where you might have like one story, but then you've got an entire episode around it. Whereas here, I definitely agree with you that there's a lot of Scripture in each episode.
Well, I think the big difference is with as far as Scripture goes this season than in previous seasons is that they're being very very word for word accurate to the known Scriptures, and it's just not the way the characters have been talking up till now. The characters have been talking, in a ancient-y kind of way, but in a way that makes sense. But when they shift over into the word for word stuff, it sounds archaic. It sounds like it's not them talking. It feels you can feel the story having to try to bend the words to fit the actual words from Scripture. And I don't know what the solution would be if they should have gone with more of something like taking the Message version of the Bible at this for some of this stuff, but at the same time, it's like this is the important part. This is the meat of the gospel is right here. So how do you? It's like again, it's like how do you balance the two different things that are
Mhm.
demanding attention for this kind of endeavor?
That's interesting. So, are there any characters in particular that you feel like their voice has kind of changed as the show has
Well, I
leaned in?
mean, just all the stuff Jesus is saying. I mean, he's
Okay.
using it's a lot of very difficult to understand verbiage the way that it's that it's written in the Bible. It's just kind of it's not like people talk
Mm,
normally. The way he's explaining some of these things, he kind of you almost have to have somebody else like ask a question like what did he mean or to explain it just because
yeah.
it's not fully understandable just within the context of
Mhm.
hearing it being said in one pass. I mean, it's kind of like you
Mm,
need to be able to read it and read it again and then
yeah.
kind of break it apart. I mean, it's you can't do that when it's just coming at you
Yep.
in real time.
No, I definitely get what you're saying there. Some of the Last Supper sequences, there's a lot. They can be very dense to unpack. And the show, they've introduced like a few additional kind of like interjections or stuff from the disciples, but not quite as many as maybe in previous seasons. Like if I think back to when Jesus like commissions the disciples, for example, there was like a lot of kind of like crosstalk and like Jesus getting interrupted and things like that. Whereas
Mhm.
it seems like with the upper room discourse and the Last Supper and some of the things like that, they've tried to follow even just like the flow of conversation as it's recorded in John much more closely
Mhm.
than we get in some of the other episodes of The Chosen. So I definitely get what you're saying there, that it feels like a little bit of a departure from what the show has done in the past. I mean, I could see like an argument for the show that Jesus, like there is a sense to why they've made the change. Like you could kind of justify it within the world as far as Jesus, this is like a very solemn moment, so maybe he is kind of adopting more heightened language and things like that. But at the same time, I get
Mhm.
from the viewer experience, it's definitely like a different experience, having kind of that like dense language and stuff that isn't as easy to follow. Yeah, I definitely see where you're coming at there.
And just one other little thing real quick, and we'll probably go over it. But it's like I think the structure of seeing three episodes at once in the theater is helping or is hurting this particular aspect of it because
Mm,
after an episode I kind of want to unpack it a little bit.
yep,
I want to
yep,
I want to talk with
yep,
some people about that, but we're going right into the next one, going right into the next one,
yep,
and it just kind of diminishes that ability to really dig into it to try to
yep.
make sure it's like is that what I did he say it the way that he said it, or I mean this kind of those things. I want to talk to people about it like right away.
Yeah, and even with the Last Supper opening sequences, you're not getting even the full credits to like, because if we were just watching these
Right.
episodes individually, you would get kind of that 30 seconds of credits sequence to like catch your
Hmm.
mind up and
Right.
like give you a little bit of a pause. So I think even that is like a significant difference as far as like the experience of the opening sequence. But I agree with you. I think 3 episodes is too much, at least for my taste. It was like I can't imagine. I know that they're doing like the 8 hour binge thing. I cannot imagine that experience. I'm sure like there are some
Somebody will
people
do it.
are all for it, and like that's cool if that's you. That's awesome. But that would be way too much for me. I would have a headache by the end. And even the 3 hours, yeah, especially because it's like so dense. I think it's particularly a lot to take in. So part of me wishes that they could go back to like season 3 where the first 2 episodes they had in theaters, because kind of like the first 2 episodes and then the last 2 episodes
Hmm.
are, especially with the chosen, like the big episodes of the season. That's the last 2 are where you get the walking on the water and the Sermon on the Mount and things like that. And for this season, first 2 episodes, that would have covered the triumphal entry and the cleansing of the temple. But I get, it's kind of hard to walk back what they've been doing, and there's
Hmm.
a lot of benefits to it for the show, but I don't think it's the ideal So I think the first 2 episodes, it was a really good experience in theaters, but I think it's not ideal for episodes 3 to 5 personally. Kyle, I'm curious, hearing kind of some of Victor's reaction, did you feel similar things, or did you have other thoughts kind of after your initial experience of?
Wait, sorry, could you say that one more time?
Yeah, I'm just curious. Did you hear some of the things that Victor was saying? I'm curious if you could resonate with any of that, or
am I crazy?
Oh no, definitely not crazy. By the way, I've got to hit the road in about 3 minutes, so my apologies. I'm gonna cram a bunch of stuff in. I'm gonna call in though, and hopefully I can connect with you guys on the road.
Cool. That'd be cool.
Yeah, it'd be fun. So yeah, Vic, I said something similar to that in season 4, where it's like you could tell the shift when Jesus was being written by the Chosen, and then when he was written by the New King James Version. You know, you could like just tell where it shifted, and I thought that was a challenge for the writers. You know, to like, how do you best massage that to where the character sounds like one character? I do think that's a challenge, and what it sounds like, Vic, is you're advocating for is a message version of The Chosen.
Well, I don't even know if I'm advocating for that, but it's like I'm trying to figure out what this but I might be advocating for that. That's just what I don't know, as I'm trying to figure out what that line is.
Right, not meaning that somebody makes The Chosen with the message dialogue, but somebody makes you know what I'm saying.
That sounds like it was written in the 21st century.
Exactly. Okay, in case I can't connect with you guys on the road, I'm just going to take 2 minutes and just cram a bunch of opinions towards you guys, and then hopefully we can just pick up and talk about them. I want to say cleansing of the temple, episode 3 redeemed a lot of my problems with it, because they showed people on the side of Jesus celebrating. I think they should have done that at the end of episode 2. They should have shown that from the beginning, but I loved how they had the people behind Jesus there. I thought that confrontation was really intense, and I thought they brought that home well. I thought it was important because after Diana my wife heard us talking about this. She hadn't seen the episode, but she was asking me, so Jesus was like enraged, and it sounds like he was yelling and screaming and flipping things over and out of control, and she has a lot of problems in her past with just men doing that and kind of losing their temper and scaring people, and she was like, how is that not a sin, and I think had they shown I won't repeat myself, you get it though. I'm glad that they had it in the beginning of episode 3, the people being alongside Jesus. If I hear one more scene where the discourse is, this Jesus of Nazareth is a problem. Yeah, but what can we do? Because if we do something, there will be a riot. If I hear one more scene like that, I'll probably cry or something. I don't know. It'll be ugly.
Start flipping tables over.
I'll cleanse the theater. I'll start overturning popcorn, throwing Coke on my neighbor. No, they have too much. They have too much bloat, like you were saying, Vic. But I enjoyed these 3 episodes quite a lot more than the first 2. I really, Kevin, you mentioned this on your website, but I really enjoyed how they had the parable being enacted by the disciples. I thought that was fun and theatrical. They had a couple of nitpicks. Jesus, when he tells Judas, he has you now, and Judas says, who? Jesus shouldn't have said anything else. Saying not God, that's lame. Like, what the heck kind of line is that? Not God. Like, that's a bunt. He should have just been quiet and just stared him down. Also,
that was for the audience, though. That wasn't for Judas.
Oh, man. Yeah. The audience deserves a better line than that then. Not God. That sounds like some 7th grade retort or something. I
know you are, but what am I?
Yeah. This is kind of like the other one. It's not even worth saying. Pilate, I thought the entire time of Martin Short, it was delightful. Thank you, Vic, for that. That was great. But I really enjoyed a lot of these episodes. And and I will connect with you, Lord willing, in about 5 minutes once I get my stuff situated in the car. But thank you for bearing with that barrage. Once again, plug The Bible Artist. It's awesome. And I read a bunch of your stuff today. It was great. And I'll see you guys in a couple of minutes.
Awesome. Right. Thanks, Kyle.
Thank you.
While he's mentioning it, I didn't really mention at the top of the broadcast, I am the writer of The Bible Artist. You can check out BibleArtist.com for reviews, analysis of the different episodes, both of The Chosen, House of David. I do Bible studies. I do other resources. And so, definitely check out all the stuff that I've got on the website. And if you want to help support my work, I've got a Buy Me a Coffee, which has a link in the show notes. So thanks again for, checking that out if you do.
Buy Me a Coffee is kind of like Patreon if you're not familiar with Buy Me a Coffee.
I should clarify that. So it's like Patreon. You can do like a membership, but you can also do just like a once-off like contribution or whatever. Okay, but anyway, back to Chosen part 2. So I can see. I processing through things Kyle said. If there's anything else that I wanted to comment on that.
It's like none of it was bad. I know it's like whenever you have criticisms, but it's like I'm trying to imagine somebody that isn't already Bible friendly. How that's gonna come across, because that's got to come across so dense and so like, what are they talking about? And it's just, I just don't know if there's an easier way that they could have said that. But at the same time, you say like, well, the words of the gospel should be good enough. You shouldn't have to, especially these most important pieces of it. I get the desire to want to stay totally true, but I say there's that tension.
I do think that the decision to put the Last Supper and Upper Room Discourse at the front, like, of each episode in the introduction, that's definitely like a bold move, as far as like you were saying, like if the show on the one hand is kind of making this play to kind of broaden out its appeal, it's putting up the New York Times or the New York Times Square, yes, the billboards and doing all this stuff to kind of bring in a broader audience, but then at the same time starting out with like large chunks of teaching at the beginning of each episode that you don't have a whole lot of context on. It's definitely like a bolder move. I mean, hopefully if people are new to the show, they start with season 1 and watch their way up here. But if someone did just like kind of walk in, I think they might get lost, especially if they, like you said, are not super familiar with the Bible, or maybe are just kind of a young Christian who hasn't been able to dig into some of these things. One thing I would say to what you were saying, Victor, I do wonder if instead of like dumbing it down or whatever, just like making it a little less dense, like doing a little bit more of those interjections where we have the different disciples kind of being the audience surrogate, asking the questions that we have, slowing down the flow of conversation so that we can process through things a little bit more. I think that could have been helpful with at least with some of the Last Supper, Upper Room Discourse things that went on, and maybe even in some of the other teaching contexts as well, where it is a lot to take in. And as someone who's like been in seminary, like I get that like it's maybe not quite, I'm maybe more like conversant in some of the things as like compared to like just like the average audience member. Oh, I mean, even you, Victor, like we've been looking at some of this stuff, like I don't think you have to necessarily have been, at seminary to at least like be aware of some of these things. You've probably read through your New Testament a couple times at least. So, I mean, I think someone who's like really fresh into scripture, this is going to be like a shock to the system, I think, in some of these different areas, which isn't a totally bad thing. Like it's awesome that people are taking in, God's word. If anyone who's like complaining about The Chosen diverging too much from from Scripture. This is definitely a season where, I mean, there are things that are unique or like new to the story that The Chosen is introducing, but they're definitely doing a lot more stuff where it's just kind of almost pure, translation of the biblical text on Jesus's lips. So yeah, like it's an interesting choice. I think there are trade-offs, and I see some of the benefits of it as well, but also some of the challenges. Yeah, anything else kind of big picture about part 2 that you want to address before we dig into some of the specifics?
I mean, some of the specifics will probably, the things I have to say will probably pop up in the specifics. So
Okay,
let's just go
cool.
through it.
Yeah, if we don't get into something, we can just get back to it later. So I want to, this is a little nerdy discussion that I want to have, even though
I love this.
yeah, some people might not be into this, but so I mentioned this on my blog, but I wanted to kind of illustrate it a bit. This is my theory for what the show is doing with the season. So one thing in advance that I want to acknowledge, I'm guessing that episode 8 is going to be outside of this pattern, but it's possible that this actually episode 8 will be at the center. But let me explain what I'm describing before I start making exceptions. So I think The Chosen is taking kind of a cue from Christopher Nolan's Memento, which I'm not going to explain all of Memento to you. If you haven't seen Memento, it's a really fun movie. It's about this guy who loses his memory. But one of the unique things about the film is that there are 2 different timelines that are happening. Like we kind of switch back and forth between these 2 timelines. And one of the timelines is going forward in time. So this is like how a normal movie works. Like each scene follows the scene that happened before it. So scene 1, and then there's scene 2, scene 3, scene 4. But then there's another timeline, and that timeline is actually happening backwards. So each scene is actually the scene before the last scene. So the scenes are kind of going backwards in time. And then eventually those 2 timelines meet at the end of the film. So like the story that was going backward in time and the story that was going forward in time, they reach a point where they both are intersecting. And that's where the end of the film is. And so my theory with The Chosen season 5 is that we're basically doing the same thing. So these are the episode introductions. It's so E1 is like episode 1, and then there's like an I there, and then this is the episode like main story, E1 main. So the episode 1 introduction starts at the end of the Last Supper, the Jesus giving his high priestly prayer, and then each episode introduction after that takes a step back. So episode 2's introduction was immediately before episode 1. Episode 3 is immediately before that. Meanwhile, the main stories are obviously moving forward in time, right? And so what I think is going to happen is that in episode 7 or potentially episode 8, those 2 timelines are going to meet. So we're going to, the main story is finally going to reach the point of the Last Supper. And I'm guessing that the Lord's Supper is going to be kind of the centerpiece of that point where the 2 storylines meet in the middle, and we'll get kind of a beautiful scene. Yeah. So did I explain that well, Victor? Like, do I need to explain more about that?
I mean, the only way it'll make more sense is if you've seen Memento. It's kind of but it's just we just have 2 different timelines going. One's going forward, one's going in reverse, and the pieces that were shown are going to actually just come together in one of the later episodes. I mean,
Yep.
I get it. Whenever you explained it on your, I think I read it on your blog, and maybe it was on one of the little videos, but I remember thinking like that was brilliant. I really hadn't been paying attention to the order of the Last Supper intros. But I do remember, like in the very first one, you don't see Judas sitting next to Jesus, and then I don't know if it's the second one or the third one, but that he's there from that point on, and then you're like, okay, I guess we're seeing it at least that one's coming earlier. But
Yeah.
you've kind of looked at them, and they are sequencing directly in reverse.
I think so. I might want to, I haven't been able to watch back through everything since I had that theory. So I didn't develop that theory until the second part, when some of the episode introductions like very closely like interlap with each other. So the episode 5 introduction ends with John doing the Danu prayer or whatever, which was the what happened at the beginning of episode 4, and then episode 4 it ends with what happened at the beginning of episode 3. So that I feel like I wonder if they like kind of intentionally made it a little more opaque in the first 2 episodes, and then in the later episodes they kind of started hinting at it a little bit more, so that we could kind of start to realize like, oh, that's what they're doing. I don't know. So
it's one of those things that even if you don't notice it, it doesn't matter. I mean, I think you still enjoy it. So it's only really fun if you notice it and you start paying attention to it. Then I think it becomes fun. I don't even know if I'd call it an Easter egg, but just a fun structural thing that they've done that's really, really, really clever.
Yeah, and one of the things that's interesting about it is that what biblical authors do a lot is they create these structures called chiasms, which is when kind of the end of the story will correspond to the beginning of the story. So like a real simple like alphabet chiasm is, A, B, C, D, C, B, A, where, things kind of match sequentially from the beginning matches the end and so on. And it's not quite that, but it's like a little bit like that, especially when you kind of chart it out the way that I have. So I wonder if that's kind of part of what they're trying to do with this, is like kind of make a nod towards kind of the biblical tradition of having these very kind of elaborate structures, which have a point. Like you said, you don't necessarily have to be able to appreciate it. Lots of people, as they're reading through the Bible, they aren't like seeing the chiasms that are there if you haven't like gone to seminary or whatever. But like people who have like done like deeper studies, they start to see these chiasms all over, and they're like, there's more kind of insight that you can get as you notice some of these structures that are in the biblical text, and I imagine some of these structures that are in the Chosen as well. So I think what they're doing with that most likely is kind of, it's like a way to kind of highlight the centrality of most likely like the Lord's Supper that we'll get in episode 7. So yeah, I don't know. I think it's cool. And like I said, I think episode 8 will probably then take place after the Last Supper is complete, because we've had like some hints that we'll get a little bit after the Last Supper, right? I think we've like seen like an image of Jesus where it looks like he's in the garden, and I think I've heard of people just kind of mentioning stuff that seems like it sounds like they'll get to the garden at least, but we'll have to see. I don't know for sure if we'll get this episode 8 that takes place after, but yeah, it was fun to like piece this together, especially because I'm a fan of Memento, fan of Christopher Nolan. So I just wanted to geek out for a little bit and call attention to that.
Kevin, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
You can. Okay, I just wanted to give you your flowers for that one too, man. I thought that was a really cool insight that you had, and in the theater, I didn't get it. I was like, Judas wasn't in there, after, he went away, and what was that, episode 4?
Yep.
And then episode 5, he was back in the seat. And so I was like, did he go and come back already? I didn't understand. So when I saw your YouTube short, I was like, I see. That was cool.
Yeah. I imagine, that is like a confusing thing, like also that the show has to overcome. Like it's a cool like structure, but it could be confusing for a lot of viewers who don't immediately get that, these things are not the introductions, at least, aren't chronologically sequenced. So but yeah. Yeah. Any other thoughts on we've already talked a lot about the Last Supper intros and stuff like that, but
Can I
any
ask you
other
guys something about those?
Yeah.
Do you find them entertaining?
I liked the Danu prayer. I thought
loved that.
Yeah.
That was so cool. I loved all of that. I loved the way they did it, especially the way the women did it. I have comments on that, like positive comments when we talk about that. Yeah.
Sure, go for it if you want to.
Oh, you know what? Okay, I'll say one thing, and believe me, like when I say this, I mean this in the truest possible way. Like every woman in that scene was beautiful, and I don't mean like physical attractiveness. I mean like they were glowing. You know, they were like I thought that the acting that they all did was so touching, and I was just struck by, man, these women are beautiful as they're reciting this stuff. It brought some tears to my eyes.
Yeah, beautiful, and like your faith is beautiful, you know, kind of scriptural beauty. Like, yeah, I agree. It was.
I consider it the highlight of the season so far.
Yeah,
and one of the highlights of the whole show.
Yeah.
Yeah, me too.
I love how they, use that to bring together kind of elements from past seasons and stuff, and kind of draw on our nostalgia for the show, and also just like, it really points to kind of the very personal way that Jesus meets each one of us, and how we can all experience very unique forms of kind of being kind of touched by his presence and by his works and stuff. So I agree.
I really liked how on your blog you said something like, this should be something we should all do.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think it's a great, I mean, it's like it's a wonderful way to use that same form, and it's I can imagine just how emotional that would be for a group of people doing that. Know, because these were just characters on a show, and it was emotional.
Yeah.
But when you can do that same thing with your group of people that you're close to, and express, this is who I am, this is where I've come from, or how this is what Jesus has done for me. It's I think it's just super powerful. I think they really should figure out a way to have Diane parties or something, or whatever they can do to make a viral moment out of it or something.
Yeah, definitely. Like, if you are like someone who watches The Chosen with like a small group or whatever, like I feel like this is like a perfect like practice that you could do going into the Passover, Easter season, just to recall kind of the ways that God has been present in all of the lives of your group. Or if you have a larger family, I could see you doing it as a family too. I'm definitely, my family at this point, it's just my wife and my two kids who might not quite be there, but down the road, this is definitely something I would consider doing for like some sort of kind of family liturgy or something like that.
I see a downloadable how-to sheet, how you can do this for your group.
Yeah.
We should totally work on that. Yeah.
Right.
Because I've done something similar. So one of my professors, I don't know if you guys know the psalm where it goes like each line, you do a line, and then after each line you repeat the refrain, for his steadfast love endures forever. So we did that like as a class in one of my seminary classes, and it was like really powerful, touching moment. And then my wife and I, we actually, for our wedding, we did that like between the two of us, kind of describing God's steadfast love, his presence kind of in our lives, kind of leading up to our marriage. And that was one of my favorite moments in our wedding. So incorporating these little kind of little prayers and liturgical things inspired by stuff either in scripture or in tradition can be really like powerful spiritual practice for gratitude, and just helping you like remind you of the ways that you've experienced God's grace and his presence. anything else kind of, or I mean, if you guys have other thoughts on the Danu or other things related to the Last Supper.
I thought it was really clever how they had the sisters, Mary and Martha, split the resurrection of their brother. You know, like had you, I forget what all was said, but if you had done A but not resurrected my brother, it would have been enough. If you would have resurrected my brother but not it would have been enough. Like I liked the writing there; it was clever.
Yeah. They definitely. The show has they do really well with like little like poetry and stuff like that. Like I remember back to season 4 with Mary's poem that she did that was really like moving to a lot of people. I feel like when they have these little moments, it can be a real highlight for the show.
And that's the kind of thing that a show like this is perfect for doing, is where it can take something that isn't in the Bible. But it does not contradict or doesn't feel out of place. It feels like it could be. It doesn't feel like it's taking the place of Scripture in any way, but it feels like this is totally within that world and would have fit within the events. It just kind of, those are the kind of things that I really enjoy when shows are adapting like books or things like that, towards like, when they take something but they add something to it, but then you feel like, oh, that should have been in there the first time. That's some of my favorite stuff.
And it's this whole like sequence, it was a great way of also kind of reinforcing the connection between what Jesus is doing in the Last Supper and like the Passover and the Exodus story, which like readers of the the original scriptures, they just would have like known that because they were so kind of steeped in that tradition and everything. But for us, a lot of us not coming from a Jewish tradition, not having kind of those experiences of Passover that we kind of are reading into the Last Supper and what's going on. I think like little things like this are great ways for the show to help us like make those connections that we might not always make, even as we're reading through Scripture ourselves. So I thought that was really cool. Any other parts from the intros? I thought that I liked Thomas when like the part of the sequence where some of the disciples were, they were arguing about who the betrayer was, and Judas is like throwing Thomas under the bus, and then even Thomas seems to be like kind of like second guessing himself, and he goes up to Jesus like very emotionally and is like, is it me? And like he genuinely seems kind of like shaken by that thought. I like that moment.
I like that too. I thought that was handled well.
No, but that was go ahead.
Oh no, you go ahead.
No, I was gonna say that's one of those things that was kind of out of order, to where the accusation happened later than the event. That it just felt like that was something that kind of was like, well, that I had to recalibrate in my head when this was, because it seemed like the accusation happened earlier than we had anything that they would have accused anybody of within the sequence.
So I think we'll actually get the original accusation in episode 6, and so but I agree with you, that was kind of confusing to like come in the midst of that and like be like, oh wait, did I miss something in last episode? But that's a point where kind of this unique sequencing was a little bit confusing. Okay, let's keep moving on, so we don't get too caught up. So Kyle, you were saying that you really liked Jesus' confrontation with the temple leaders and the religious leaders. Was there anything in particular about that sequence that you really enjoyed?
So there were 2 separate ones. Are we talking about after the cleansing of the temple?
We can start there, and then if you want to differentiate between you're right, there's kind of the initial confrontation at the end of the cleansing of the temple, and then Jesus goes away for a bit and then he comes back. Let's start with the initial confrontation, and then we can go on to the debates that happen afterward.
Well, I liked how furious Jesus clearly was. He was furious but in control. And that was really intense. Like, I liked a lot of the choices they made. Like Atticus feeling like he was going to display some power and let Jesus talk. And Jesus doesn't even look at him. He just, it's like it's like Atticus is invisible to Jesus. He just marches towards Caiaphas and the chief priests and everything. And so, okay, sorry. I really liked how he exerted authority, and he said, "No more will there be sales for Passover." You know, and the people, he carried weight. You know, to the people, he wouldn't have the office to make that call. But the way that they displayed it in The Chosen, he really genuinely seemed authoritative, and I believed that he felt like that was his father's house and his house. And so that brought it all home to me. I really liked. I don't have any criticism of that confrontation, to be honest. I thought it really well executed. What did you guys think?
Victor, do you have any thoughts?
I agree. It was I was a little more critical of it last week. I think as were you, Kyle. I think this was just a much better sequenced confrontation. Just everything was super intense, and it didn't feel bloated or the whipping wasn't as we didn't have to worry about being taken out of it by that.
Right.
Yeah, and it was definitely more kind of, I think it helps that Jesus had like a clear kind of antagonistic force that he was standing against, and we understand some of the problem with them and everything. So, and yeah, there's definitely like I like I was going to say chemistry between the two, but it's almost like anti-chemistry, the contempt and but also kind of the fear, like you feel like they're kind of like caught on the spot trying to figure out what to say and what to do in the midst of this crazy situation that's happening. So yeah, I agree. That opening sequence was really strong.
There was one. Oh, go on. Sorry.
No, you go for it, because I think I was going to move on, but if you've got something with this,
right before we move on, because it is fun to talk about the next section. One nitpick I have is I do think that the Chosen writers have gotten a little bit too comfortable in the script of having Jesus do something astonishing and then the disciples bickering over it. In the follow-up scene, all of the disciples were trying to make sense of what Jesus had done, and various opinions are tossed out, and I wish, and also I may be conflating that scene with the second time he goes after the Pharisees. So forgive me if I'm doing that, but I would have loved for there to have been a few disciples who were holding the pom-poms for Jesus after the cleansing of the temple, and just who got it, it's like, it's about time, I would have loved for that, like that to have been an invigorating moment. I guess we actually did, because the Simon Z, he seemed like he understood, zeal for your house has overtaken me. And so, Kevin, actually, am I conflating this with after Jesus talks about the taxes? Because that scene, I know, like, none of the disciples were feeling what Jesus did. None of them liked it.
Yeah, so I'm having a little bit of difficulty too, like trying to, but I think there's a reason that we're both kind of struggling there. In as far as like this is kind of taking a little bit of a tangent to like the disciples and stuff. I think one of the challenges of these 3 episodes is that we got like a lot of, like you said, kind of that same sequence of like Jesus doing something surprising, the disciples like bickering and like trying to make sense of it and worried about the implications. So I think that became like a little too repetitive, or in some cases it felt like a little too redundant, where we were, I mean, the conversation was advancing a little bit, but I wonder if they could have found ways to kind of add a little bit of like action or different things to so that it didn't feel like it was too much of the same kind of movement between the different sections.
That's right.
I agree with you that it's kind of hard. Like if I went back to my notes and stuff, I could tell you, but just off the top of my head, those two sequences do feel similar, where we've got a lot of bickering. There's probably some people who are like, we should trust Jesus and take him at his word, but a lot of the people are, a lot of the disciples are trying to be like, this is horrible, and what are we going to do? Like,
but
so
I think they kind of have to keep that trajectory going, because we still have a whole bunch more of them not understanding what's going on before
yeah.
So you can't. I think if you start saying like, well, some of them understand, well, why don't they understand? 10 minutes later, but then they understand 10 minutes later, but then they don't understand again. At least they're kind of on an annoying ignorance trajectory going forward.
No,
There's like
point.
keystone cops.
I don't mind like that the trajectory is long term, and maybe I don't know, Dallas, if you're listening, maybe you're frustrated with me, because one of my criticisms of some of the past seasons of The Chosen is that there's like not enough unity and too many like kind of episodic elements, and it seems like I'm now kind of saying like, oh, there's too much unity, it was too much the same, and we need like some random things in the middle there to break things up. But I don't know, maybe I'm being hypocritical here.
Well, I think this is just a problem with adapting something as opposed to creating it from scratch. If you're creating the show from scratch, there's you wouldn't have but 4 disciples total. You wouldn't have 12 of them. You wouldn't have a whole bunch of these things, because it's so many moving. I mean, I've just so much admiration for how they're able to, even with the nitpicking we have, how they're able to keep all these plates spinning and everything kind of moving in the correct direction. And even though it may be a little clunky and a little at parts, it's still, everything's going in the direction it needs to go. We're getting the information we need, and it's incredible. But it's like that's one of the challenges of adapting something. That was never written to be a narrative.
Or not this kind of
right,
like a modern
not a modern story with a 3-act structure and a beginning, middle, and end, and whatever.
What's coming to my mind in this, because I'm now remembering it is 2 distinct scenes, and in both of them coming after Jesus went after the chief priests and the Pharisees and whatnot. And in the first one, after the cleansing the temple, the best the disciple that comes to Jesus' aid the most is Matthew, who just reminds the people that Jesus didn't assault anybody. But imagine you can really picture in that scene Peter taking a big old bite of an apple, putting his arms out wide and being like, I don't see what the problem is. What's the problem? Like there's a lot I don't understand, but I understand this. It does drag, and it does make it look like Jesus's closest followers really why are you guys even following him? I get the signs, but they seem to none of them ever seem to be able to make any sense of what he's saying.
But that's the Bible, though, isn't it? I mean, they're kind of clueless on a lot of stuff until
that much in the Bible. Is it? I know that they are confused by a lot of his statements, but pretty much, all of his actions, are they drawing that kind of confusion from the disciples? You guys would probably know better than me.
I want to make a pitch here for something, because I like this is kind of building on what you just said there, Kyle. They could have had the disciples, some of them actually think that he was because he did that he was moving things along, so the disciples who are wanting him to act in a more aggressive way and actually start taking on the ruling authorities in Rome and stuff. For this first sequence, they could have been excited for it, because they could have been like, yeah, he's finally taking it to the man. He's finally going after these guys. And we still could have had some that were worried about it. But it would have, I agree with you, Kyle. It would have been cool to have some of the disciples be more positive about it. But then because they are getting the wrong impression, that would have made their kind of when Jesus reveals like, actually, what I said about me like suffering and dying, like that's still the plan, then they could have been like all the more frustrated because they thought that they thought things were changing and they thought that Jesus was finally on the attack or whatever.
Right.
I don't know. That's one like way they could have handled that, that I think would have given a little more like variety to kind of the sequence and kind of the emotions and stuff like that.
Yeah,
But
speaking of that, because like the end of the last episode, you had Judas saying, "What have you done?" It
Yeah.
should have been like he should have been, "Woohoo!" At last.
Right.
I mean,
It was
Right.
the
it's hard
exact
'cause, like,
opposite.
with Judas, like they have him like wanting to like ally with the religious leaders, so I get how that kind of fit into to his arc, but they could have at least had like some of the disciples in that point, or have Judas feel like a little mixed about it.
Well, he
Yeah.
would have immediately had that thrown backwards on
Yeah.
him right after that. So he could have had that moment, and then it goes
Yeah,
even worse than what he was expecting.
Yeah. Yep. But yeah, I definitely agree with you, Victor. Like, this is the task that the creators of The Chosen are having to deal with. Like, it's very, very difficult. Like to have
Right.
the cast the size that they do, and trying to incorporate all these different voices and deal with some of the events that are in the Gospels and try to like maintain kind of the basic outline of what's going on. It's very difficult. So people who are listening to us, don't take this as us thinking that we are smarter than any of the creators of The Chosen, or thinking that it's horrible. Like, I enjoyed these episodes. I'm just kind of processing out loud and using this as like a way to continue to think about how the show can improve and stuff like that. So
Kevin, can I interrupt real quick?
Yeah.
You know how we were talking about last week, incorporating different storylines for the disciples, and like
I felt that this week.
I feel like this is one of those ways, in retrospect, maybe you could have done it, is have the characters' response to what Jesus is doing be different. So like you can see that one of the characters, you do that with Judas, but Matthew might have a different way he responds to the render to Caesar what is Caesar's. Or like Peter is Jesus' homeboy through it all, and you could just, and then they kind of bicker because they're all having these different reactions to what Jesus is teaching, rather than more of a uniform confusion. Though I'm sure that Dallas, if he's listening to this, is probably banging his head on the desk like, they all have different reactions. What are you talking about? Didn't you see the nuances?
But yeah, I agree with you. Like, I'm sure I agree that the nuances are there, and like Judas definitely has kind of his own distinct perspective. John has kind of his own perspective. You might be able to point to like, I don't know, maybe like Thomas or something, but it is kind of like hard to track the kind of through line for some of these characters. And so this actually gets to something that I like am realizing about season 5, in that I feel like the show has shifted in a way from kind of its initial conception, where like season 1, the whole like idea of the show was this isn't a show about Jesus. This is a show about people who are following Jesus and who are kind of watching him. Whereas like with season 5, I feel like the show is actually much more like a show just about Jesus. Like, we're getting a lot more sequences of just following Jesus around on his own, seeing kind of his own personal dynamics, which is really interesting. And some of the there's some really like moving sequences in the season. So I'm not necessarily like complaining about that, but it is like a shift, and I feel like that is part of what's kind of changed the experience of the show. We aren't, because the show is devoting so much time to like Jesus as a main character in his own right, as opposed to being this character who is kind of showing up and affecting kind of the lives of our real like point of view main characters. That just, it's a very different approach to things than some of the previous seasons. Do you guys feel like I'm like
No,
I'm
you're
crazy.
100% right on that. That is, we are following him. And I think some of the other problem with this is that when we are being given storylines with the other disciples, not all of them have interesting things to do. I mean, some of them are just
Yeah.
you really feel like, and now we gotta check in with Nathaniel or with, whoever, and you're like, it's like I think we could have done without, four of the disciples getting any of the details about him.
Yep.
Let him be there in the shot, but like let's
Yep.
just stay focused on this and give the characters that are important
Yep.
more interesting things to do in that same span of time.
Yeah, I agree with that. Like, I get how probably from like kind of keeping all the actors engaged and like on board with the show, like that may be like a factor that's involved, and characters just don't want to, or the actors don't want to just be like a background character who doesn't get any lines. But I agree with you that like if we like kind of condense the lines into just a few like characters, then you could actually create, like during some of those debate sequences or whatever, you could focus on having a more clear kind of emotional arc for the characters that we really care about, as opposed to kind of trying to cover everybody, but muddling it as a result of that.
It's like Matthew hadn't gotten anything to do this
Yeah.
season, or the last two seasons, really, since he and Peter had that
Right.
confrontation last year, which was
Yep.
my favorite scene of the entire last season.
It was great.
He hadn't gotten anything to do.
I know. That's sad to me.
And like this would have been like a perfect, the whole like debate over taxes with Caesar and everything. It would have. I don't know exactly what to do with that, but like it definitely strikes me as an episode that could have been like a Matthew point of view episode, where we we're getting him kind of reflecting on his time as a tax collector. Like maybe you could meet someone who like was affected by the taxes that he did, or something like a little bit more personal, in the midst of kind of these big like Jesus-centered debates that were going on.
In retrospect, I wonder if it would have been interesting to stretch out Matthew and Peter's conflict until it resolved in the aftermath of that. The render to Caesar. Whatever. We don't need to spend time talking about that, but that's interesting.
Yeah, that is interesting. Yeah.
I loved the confrontation with that, by the way. Sorry, I gotta go in a few minutes, so I won't barrage again. But I did want to say I thought that whole sequence was great. Like the parable being theatrical, and then Jesus doesn't seem like he's gonna go after the Pharisees, but then he does, and that moment turns when he's like, "They are sitting on the seat of Moses, so do what they say, but do not do what they do." Like that this whole scene turned on a dime there.
Yep.
And I thought it was really effective. And Jesus goes at him.
Yep.
Like he goes at him in scripture just as hard. So that was the only nitpick. Now, this is not I hope this doesn't sound political. It's a poetic criticism. He should have said, inside or you're like whitewashed tombs, pretty on the outside, but on the inside full of dead men's bones. Jesus said dead people's bones, which is just not as poetic. Dead men's bones is like such a cool hardcore metal phrase. Dead people's bones just sounds kind of limp. There's my criticism, Dallas.
It's a good point.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Kyle, you're not going to be here for us to discuss David episode 8.
Wait, give me a minute on David.
You give your couple minutes. We'll jump ahead. Go for it.
Here's all my opinion on David. Loved it. Such a great season finale. Really did not like seeing Goliath be killed, because as you guys know, he was my second favorite character next to David. And the way that they did it was really cruel and brutal. Like it was a really, really brutal death. Like the way that they cut to the wide and he's kind of standing there motionless. And then it cuts to him looking down at his hand, and his hand is shaking, but you can tell his brain has been kind of affected by that stone. And then he tries. It's like a really personal and brutal way to kill him. I was a little bit surprised.
Yeah, that was awesome.
Yeah.
great episode, great season. I can't wait
Yeah.
for season 2, and I can't wait to listen to what you guys have to say about
Mm.
all the twists and turns of that episode.
Mm.
You know, a lot of really fascinating stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, as I was watching, I was thinking that, you know, I hope somebody was there to hug you during that sequence.
Oh, dude. Oh, so sad, man. Poor Goliath. He didn't mean any harm. He was just a sweet guy.
Mm.
he liked drawings on the walls.
Yeah, he did. That's all he wanted.
Yeah.
He just loved his mother.
Wanted to make her happy. Yeah.
Yeah. You guys, I really appreciate you having me on. Hold on, I parked so I can turn on my video. And it's always a joy to be a part of this podcast, and I can't wait to hear the rest of what you guys have to say. And I'm looking forward to the next episodes. And also, hallelujah, Nicodemus has returned to the chosen.
Yeah.
In a really,
Yeah.
really
fun.
awkward shot, too. What the heck? Is that like a TV trope? Like, he hasn't seen Mary Magdalene in years or whatnot, and then he turns around and faces her, but then it's just this dramatic, silent close-up for an extended period of time. Is that like a TV thing? Because in reality, he would greet her warmly with a hug.
Yeah. Yeah. It definitely felt like more TV or film or whatever, as opposed to reality.
That entire sequence was, I will have to say, that was my least favorite part of this entire 3 episodes. It felt like, now here's our TV show thing. Oh, it's
okay.
You know, she's got the hood on.
Vic, I gotta hear your take on this.
Well, I mean,
I'm gonna stay in the car. I gotta hear this.
Okay.
I mean, it was just a total TV type of thing. It's like, you know, we got to cover the person up, and it was the fact that they were doing the cross cutting between, you know, the two different, you know, who's it going to be that was, is she the one that's going to be the you know, the inform, what do they call it? The asset?
Yeah.
You know, is that who it's going to be? And it's like, you know, it's not going to be her. I mean, you know what's going to happen.
Well,
and it's the only way they just tried so hard. Yeah.
Like, they could have really built up the idea that Shmuel was going to like kidnap her, like that this, like the people were working for him to try to bring her back in order to either like force her or get one of the, you know, as leverage on Judas or whatever. Like, if they'd wanted to do that, I could have seen it working. But I agree with you. Like, we don't think that like Mary's gonna like out Jesus. Like, we definitely don't think that she's gonna like of her own free will or whatever do it. Sorry.
And it just didn't feel like the tone of the show. You know, now we're gonna have this kind of goofy, you know, sort of semi-action sort of sequence, you know, like a thriller sort of sequence in the middle of this thing, and you know it's not going to lead. I mean, it was a great reveal at the end of it, but you know, I don't. It just felt like it was like and now here's our fun TV thing we're going to do, or fun little editing thing. Maybe I know about the sausage too much, and you know, I'll never be able to appreciate these kind of things. I'm just a curmudgeon, but yeah, that's me.
No, I do think that like I like the idea of like trying to create like a little bit of suspense, but yeah, like I don't think they sold the idea that Mary was somehow going to be involved in what happened, just because like Judas's involvement is, you know, such like, you know, that's like one of the people who aren't Christian, like that's one of the few things that they know about like the gospel story is like Judas. Oh yeah, that's the guy that betrays him. So like to overcome kind of the massive amount of like just assumptions that we are coming into the episode with, that's who Shmuel is going to go get, especially when they've already you know, released like the sequence or the scene where Shmuel brings Judas to Caiaphas. You know, that's already been public, and it's in I guess it's in the trailer or whatever. I definitely agree that they didn't do enough to, like, if they wanted to make that like real suspense, they could have done more to try to do it, or create like another kind of potential like fake out if you wanted to do a fake out, like it. Yeah, Yeah.
And I guess in general, this felt like and now we got to give the Mary Magdalene actress something to do.
Mm.
I know.
That's more than just her
Yeah.
nodding and being very wholesome and wonderful. I love that scene. I think it was your suggested call last week, or maybe it was Kevin, but where she should have encountered somebody that had done her wrong back in the day, and that would have been a great opportunity. But this is kind of going there. I was kind of, because Nicodemus was somebody there that was from her past.
Mm-hmm.
That she'll be able to maybe they'll even give her a little bit of opportunity to struggle with that memory at that point. That would redeem this whole sequence for me.
I like that with Shmuel. I like the exchange that they had where he was like calling her the woman from the Red Quarter, and she stood up to him and was like, no, I'm not from the Red Quarter. I'm from Magdala by the sea, and my name's that was like a great way of like kind of calling back to her kind of season 1 storyline and stuff, and putting Shmuel in his place a little bit. So like I liked like that little aspect. I feel like we could have gotten like a little bit more of that actually, and that maybe would have made it a more meaningful thing. Like maybe if Mary and Shmuel, like there was like a little more kind of like one scenario that I see is like, instead of getting quite as much of the intrigue among the religious leaders and stuff, maybe we have like Shmuel, like, he knows that they need to find a way to track down Jesus. And so he's like following around, like trying to find Mary, or like, maybe like that could have been something that they do, that they did, where like, we actually think that he like has a plan to get Mary. But then it turns out that like, instead of getting her, Judas shows up, or I don't know, something like that. Yeah.
Okay, sorry to interrupt. I'm gonna have to jump off and get to this dealio. But okay. Last question. This is, and by the way, Kevin, sorry I had you like jump all the way ahead in the podcast because I brought up Nicodemus. Okay, last question. Out of these 3 characters, who are you most excited or hopeful? Not even excited, hopeful. Comes to Christ and owns the faith in Christ. Yusuf, which to me was a shoo-in. They've kind of like toyed with maybe it not being a shoo-in this season. Yusuf, Atticus, or Shmuel.
So are you asking which one do I think is most likely?
Which one do you hope?
Which one am I most like
which one, as you as a fan of the show, would get the most pumped up from
Yusuf?
Yeah,
I think Yusuf is definitely the most likely.
Yeah.
I think I will. I think initially I was like really wanting Atticus, but like I think there is like a value in having like someone who is just like a noble character, who doesn't necessarily believe, but who like plays a role. So like I wouldn't be like totally bummed out if Atticus didn't turn out to be, but I think it's likely that he will, but less likely maybe. Like I feel like this season has put it a little bit more in doubt, although not totally, because like he's been doing a lot to kind of help things out. Yeah, I think actually I don't know if I would want Shmuel to, like, I'm almost like want like some characters to like not in like a, like, that's a weird thing to say, like I don't want Shmuel to,
no,
but like
as a character.
from like a storytelling perspective, like I think it is good to have some characters that don't like get there, and like that you have like a little bittersweet, like, oh, like he was so close, but like yeah, there's like a little bit of like tragedy, but I wouldn't be like disappointed. I'm just, so yeah, I guess Yusuf maybe.
See, I still have this lingering.
I gotta go, you guys. Sorry,
Okay.
it was great. Thanks for having me on. I apologize for getting off. I'm gonna listen to the rest of this.
All right,
have a great time.
Have fun.
Thank you.
Now I was just gonna say, I've got this lingering little worry that Shmuel's gonna turn out to be Paul. but somehow they're going to try to make it to where it's like, well, another way of saying Shmuel is Saul. And everybody be like, oh my goodness, it was. Even though that would take so much so much mental gymnastics to try to have to imagine that he hadn't encountered Jesus prior to the road to Damascus.
Yeah.
That I just feel like that was the very first time that he had any sort of face to face or entity to entity kind of encounter with him.
Yeah, I've had that thought before. I don't think it's like super likely, but I agree with you. I would not be a fan of that. I think if they want to convert Shmuel and have him kind of be a Paulish like character, like that's fine with me. But I don't think it fits with what we get of Paul. The amount that Shmuel has like interacted with Jesus and his followers. For then kind of the Damascus Road incident to be like the thing that changes that after all the stuff that he has experienced. I think that would be a mistake, but I don't know. And I also just think from like a storytelling perspective, I can't see the show wanting to like dangling kind of his character arc between like this series and like another series. Like I think they're going to want to land him in some sort of place at the end of the series, whether it's in opposition or as a convert or like someone who feels tragic about it. I think that they're going to just kind of leave him kind of in limbo. But who knows? I do want to kind of get on to House of David, but and we've hit a lot of this. Disciples. Really quick, I wrote about this on my blog. What do you feel about like all the different religious leaders that we're following around, especially like so we've got the Caiaphas is the son-in-law of Annas the high priest, and then we also just meet Ananus, who is the son of the high priest, who didn't get the priesthood. What are your thoughts on kind of all the stuff?
It's one of those things to where my brain just kind of tunes out whenever they start talking about a lot of this, because it feels like it's like these guys don't like Jesus. That's kind of all I need to know. Yeah. And all the rest of it is just kind of it's just detail that's interesting, but it's like, I know there's like, even knowing some of it, I know there's the Pharisees are different than the Sadducees, and these believe one thing, and these believe the resurrection. These don't believe the resurrection, and this person's a member of that, and it's like it's like I understand that that's important and all that, but from a storytelling, just trying to follow it through in a linear, real time type of thing, it just kind of jumbles it all together. To where, but at the same time, it's like I am able to just kind of check out of it a little bit and not try to like follow it in minute detail. And I do just fine on the other side of it. At least the performances themselves are very compelling. So that's where I'm able to like just appreciate it for that and enjoy it and just kind of like say, okay, I'm trying, and sometimes trying to pick out what's the one detail they're trying to make sure we understand, so that other stuff following that makes sense. And, but as a pure storytelling or a filmmaking kind of thing, it does feel a little clunky. In a lot of places for me, or bloated maybe. I feel like especially introducing the Ananus, like whose name sounds like Annas, his father, and we've got like a lot of other like characters with similar names, which they've joked about before back in like season 2, I think. But I feel like I know like historically maybe some of this like envy and jealousy and some of this infighting, because this is beyond just like the Sadducees don't like the Pharisees or whatever, and this is like amongst the priests, there's jockeying for power, which historically that may be a reality, but I feel like the time that we're spending on some of that stuff
could be better spent, like we've said, like investing in some of the disciple characters that we care more about, and giving them something more kind of substantial, not just to do, but stuff that's like more personal to them. I would rather, like, I wouldn't want to like completely eliminate all of the religious leader stuff, but I think just like simplifying it down would have helped out.
Right.
Because like you said, like we don't necessarily need to know like that, Caiaphas, he had like this brother-in-law who was jealous of him and may have been like prodding him. And like, I think part of the difficulty too is like their plans are like very similar, like kind of in the end result. So it's like kind of hard to differentiate, like, okay, so the Pharisees, they want to go after Jesus. Caiaphas, he just wants to arrest Jesus. Like, how different are these approaches? Like, why are they?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it's like the way it should have been. I mean, if I was making this kind of story from scratch, it'd be like, what does Caiaphas represent? Caiaphas represents the leadership and somebody that is an authority that has a very distinct opinion that he's convinced of. And you got somebody like Shmuel, who's kind of like sort of an underling, and he's like, he's witnessed more of the stuff, so he's got more of a, less of an excuse for reasons why he would just dismiss the stuff. Then you got Yusuf, who's right there next to Shmuel, but he's got a completely different kind of mindset. Those are the three kind of different character types that you can filter the story through. And I think that's all we needed. I don't need to know any of the whatever their school they're from or what belief system or who they're opposed to. It's just like, these are people in authority that are in opposition to everything Jesus holds or is talking about. But even within the opposition, there's different levels of it. That's all we needed to know, I think.
Yep. But like you said, I do find like some of the actual performances, like the Caiaphas actor, I think it's like Richard Fancy. He does like, he's really great. Like his contempt and like his some of his like comebacks and stuff are really good. So like, it's hard. Like at kind of a big picture level, I've got some issues, but then in terms of like some of the performances and some of the kind of minute to minute writing can be really good. So were there any other things, anything about Judas or Shmuel or
well, I guess just in general, Judas has the most interesting story in this entire show, and it's because he's got like an actual kind of an arc, and they've given him some stuff that's kind of pulled from tradition and stuff of like why he did what he did or why he and that's a fascinating kind of arc. His is the most interesting story for this whole season.
Yeah, I agree with that, because it's been cool to see how they've like kind of gradually like added kind of building blocks to his character. So like, he didn't just go like break bad early on, but we saw like, he starts to get this idea of like from the very beginning of like season 3, he has this idea like, okay, I'm here to like contribute something. Like I'm not chosen just Jesus choosing me isn't just this pure act of grace, but he chose me because like I have something special that I'm here to give. And then from there, he moves on to like, okay, the special thing that I have to give is, my ideas. I'm really smart, and I can think like very practically and creatively. And from there he goes on to like, okay, like some of these other disciples, they don't understand me and they don't understand my ideas. And Jesus, like sometimes he doesn't fully understand my ideas, but they're really helpful, and I've got the big picture in mind. And from there it's like, oh, Jesus, he seems to be like doing some stuff that's it's not gonna end in like the final goal of things. So like it's cool to see kind of the different steps that he's gone through over the course of a few seasons. So
it's been a very organic trajectory for him. You totally understand how he started here and now where he ends up, and it makes total sense. And and it's like you can kind of see yourself in that same thing, because a lot of the stuff that he holds dear is just normal everyday humanity, wanting to be important and wanting to prod somebody to do something bigger than what they want. I mean, those are the kind of things that we all do and we could all easily find ourselves in that same situation of being right there and then still missing the point.
Yeah.
So it's, even though I don't know if the Bible necessarily presents Judas as this could be you, or
Mm-hmm.
it's mostly, it's like, this is the betrayer.
Yeah. Yeah.
Don't be the betrayer. But fictional type stuff has kind of given him a logical kind of like this. Anybody could have been this person.
Yeah. Yeah.
That became this person that made this terrible decision at one point.
Yeah. 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 I know, like, some people, they just want him to be like purely out for greed, because all the Bible says about him is that he took the 30 pieces of silver. But like, I think what The Chosen is doing, it makes a lot of sense, because if you think about it, like, if you witness someone walking on water, feeding people, 5,000 from a few loaves of bread and stuff like that, it's hard to believe that it would just be like oh, those 30 pieces of silver, like, it's just too enticing, when like, I know that this person has divine powers, and what they could do to me and what the implications of that. So giving him a larger kind of theory of like what he's doing, and that kind of matching some of the character that they developed, I think it makes a lot of sense, and has made him a really compelling character for the show. Yeah, and Shmuel as well. Like, I like that he's also kind of gone through an arc of, like, initially it would have been disappointing, like, if he had just been against Jesus the entire time and never really kind of wavered in that. But I like, season 4, he kind of started to waver, but then he had that kind of crisis moment that really set him off. And like, I feel like it's almost like he's kind of protesting too much a little bit in some of like the debates and stuff. Like, he's overcompensating for having kind of started to give a little bit of credence to Jesus, and now, like, he has to, like, force himself to get rid of that, by, like, just doubling down harder and harder in the way that he voices opposition.
I think, just kind of going back to what Kyle was, that question he was asking earlier, I do think we're going to see Shmuel convert at some point, because he's right there. I mean, he's 100% complicit with the betrayal with Judas. He's the one that brings him. I don't remember if in the scene, if he's the one that actually tosses the bag of money to Judas, but it's like, it's going to be at a point where they're going to both have realized that they've been responsible for murdering Jesus. And you're going to see Judas. He's not going to do what and that's one of the things. Like, could Judas have asked for forgiveness? But he didn't. He went and hung himself. Spoiler alert. But but I think Shmuel will be able to have that same choice, and I think we'll see him do what Judas could have done but didn't do, and repent and seek mercy and
you won me over on that. You won me over on that,
because they're going to be right there. They're going to be right there at the same time, and you can't have them both.
Having them as foils for each other, and allowing them to show, like, because so many people have asked that question of, like, what if Judas repented? So, like, having Shmuel kind of be that what if, he's done many of the same things as Judas, but getting to see him kind of make that decisive choice to turn. I think that is what they'll do, and I think it'll be good. So it'll
be powerful too, because that again, that's a thing that we can do. It's like, you could be a person that was right there, did a horrible thing, and yet you can still be saved.
Anything Atticus, Coffney? We don't have to get into it if you don't have anything.
I mean, those are just a lot of, like, B plots that are kind of I just kind of, especially during these long 3-episode things, I'm just kind of like, all right, let's get through that.
We already talked about Mary, and let's move on to to House of David. So we already heard Kyle's thoughts on the episode, but yeah, curious to hear your thoughts.
I thought it was a fantastic finale, and it's like watching both of these shows, in proximity with each other, and just seeing how they approach the same kinds of challenges of adapting a Bible story. Just, I just have to say, it's like at least at this point, for the stuff we're seeing these last couple of weeks, I mean, House of David is the clear winner in just the confidence and. And I'm going to attribute a lot of that to the fact that the people that are making this TV show are people that were a lot more veterans of this kind of thing than Dallas was when he started out. And he was like, for what he's done, it's fantastic. But I think the House of David is kind of like landed on a lot more, I guess, normal sort of things that we, normal sort of TV shorthand.
Yeah.
For characters and situations that, it's like I would have thought, it might be challenge to, or not challenge, but just dangerous to try to monkey with, especially like all the stuff with Goliath. But then you kind of see it in action, and you're like, oh no, that was perfectly okay, and that was the right choice to do that kind of thing.
Yep.
And I think that just comes from experience of having done so many of these kind of things that just gives them just a little bit of an edge to where it's just barreling forward at a lot more confident pace, and a lot less loadedness about it, I guess is the phrase I would use.
Yeah, I mean, part of it too, like I think especially for us, like we're both fantasy fans, and like the actual content is, people are probably going to get mad at us for saying this because like what content could be better than Jesus and Jesus's words and stuff, but like there's, from like a TV viewing experience, House of David's got a lot of action to work with, and like it can do like a little bit more variety as a result of that. We don't have to like have so many like talking people talking about the other people talking. We get to, from a TV viewing experience, it makes it a lot more interesting that we have talking and theology and things like that, but we also we get some fighting, we get some romantic stuff, and just I definitely think that it appeals to my kind of the types of stories that I also tend to enjoy the most. So I totally get where you're coming from, and they definitely have shown, like I had some issues with episode 1 in terms of like the confidence, like starting out with I still don't think that it was the right choice to, well, I won't say it wasn't the right choice like decisively, from like maybe from like a consumer perspective, it was the right choice to start out with that scene and then like cut back to earlier, but from like a kind of like artistic standpoint, like I don't think starting out with the David and Goliath battle really added anything to the series, but I get what why they Amazon felt like they needed to do it, because test audiences weren't like getting the point of the show enough or whatever. But I agree with you that they're starting, like, I think it's very different going into a show from the very beginning, knowing that you've got Amazon backing you, you've got millions in support, and so you can kind of have a certain tone and a certain like kind of confidence as far as like, this is how our story is going to move forward, as opposed to kind of with The Chosen, it's kind of had to evolve over time from being like very tight and like avoiding kind of spectacle a whole lot in the first season, to kind of gradually becoming this different type of story that we're in season 5, and I think some of the changes that have happened have been like a difficult challenge to adapt to. So I don't know if I won't like weigh what that says about the writers themselves. But I think the challenges between the two different series are different. And
I mean, just the mere fact that we're on season 5 of a show about Jesus, is incredible. Is incredible. And and it stayed compelling all the way through, and we know that we're getting to the even most compelling stuff getting ready to happen. So it's like I want to say, like, a lot of the stuff we've been nitpicking about is kind of nitpicky. But it's still, we're trying to discuss this not purely, but giving equal weight to the filmmaking, storytelling, adaptation part of it, giving both sides of it. So that's why I feel it's fair that we're giving the kind of nitpicky discussion that we're doing.
Yeah, it's funny because, like, I feel like our conversation about it is probably different from like a lot of like Christian podcast kinds of like discussions of The Chosen or House of David, for that matter, because you and me, we're both writers. Kyle also is a writer, and so like some of that stuff like is more interesting for us to talk about, and for the actual like experience of like normal people, it's probably like I'd rather you just like give your reaction,
be positive.
Be positive, like be supportive, and we are totally supportive, like but there's a value, even like I think Dallas has said that he's appreciated some of my work, which I haven't always like totally like just praised The Chosen. I've from the beginning kind of offered a mixture of like, oh, these are the things that I like, so these are some of the things that I think are a little weaker or whatever, and that's like a way that as writers hear that feedback, they can grow, the show can grow. So we're ultimately offering these like critiques and things like that with an eye towards like wanting the show to become the best version of itself. So
that's why I would feel, and I hope that if Dallas, or I know John Irwin has checked in on this podcast, but it's like I would feel that they would appreciate this kind of. We're not being haters. We're not being. It's like this is legitimate sort of the kind of feedback that, like, I'm in a writers group. This is the kind of feedback I want from everyone reading my stuff. Let me know when I'm missing the mark, or if there's a way that something can be tweaked. That's the kind of stuff I want to know, because I'm going to write more stuff. I want to do better the next time.
Okay, let's get into House of David. It's getting kind of late, so I want to keep moving. So House of David, it starts out with an opening sequence. I thought it was well done, kind of the different timeline, or not timelines, different characters, and seeing kind of them revolving around the different events. And Jonathan, he makes his brave attempt on Goliath's life. Doesn't go so well. He gets caught, and he ends up a captive of Achish. I'm gonna get some water, but Victor, if you wouldn't mind sharing kind of your thoughts either on the opening sequence and or kind of Achish, I'll be listening.
All right. Well, I thought it was a great opening sequence. I did enjoy that. I'd have to like go back and watch the first episode again, but it feels like we saw all the same scenes play out, but it seemed like there was like maybe 40-50% more stuff in between. It was like we got like the extended cut of this same sequence from the first episode. You got to see more of what was happening, unless I'm forgetting and this is exactly the same thing. But it just felt like it was a much more. It made a lot more sense, but maybe there's just more of it. Just made it was a richer kind of opening sequence. Now the whole thing with Jonathan, that's kind of would be my only negative, is that that felt like, and we're gonna get kind of an over the top action scene that didn't feel like it fit with the rest of the show. There was like no way that he would have been able to survive those kind of fights unless he's a superhero or a ninja. And he was a ninja for a couple of minutes. But then the Achish kind of let him go, which I was okay with. I was like, well, how's he going to get out of that? Okay, well, that was an okay explanation for how he survives entirely. But just the fact that he wouldn't have gotten killed prior to that, I thought that was I was pushing it just a little bit.
Yeah, they could have had him get captured sooner, or yeah, I agree. It was definitely like leaning into like the, you know,
Mm-hmm.
Aragorn being like this warrior who can take on
Mm-hmm.
like, dozens of orcs and stuff like that, like leaning a little more in that direction, which, given how like the Philistines are supposed to be kind of this fearsome force, undermine them a little bit to have it like go on like that. I do like that. That Jonathan's kind of reliance on these like Gentiles and this kind of conspiracy to go assassinate Goliath, that failed, because I feel like that kind of speaks to where the kings of Israel will end up going, which is like relying too much on Gentile power, and then kind of trying to scheme and like try to get at their enemies through like these clever schemes instead of just like trusting in the Lord. So I like that like Jonathan tried that and it failed. And I liked his moment with Achish where they're talking, and Achish like is kind of articulating this like sense of like, we are the born masters and you are the, by nature slaves, and kind of evoking kind of the Exodus storyline, which kind of sets this up as like another Exodus moment, which is, yeah, a great example of how this show, one of the things that I love about it is how they like layer different biblical stories onto the same story. We're getting kind of an Exodus moment, we're getting a Joshua moment, we're kind of anticipating the Jesus moment that's coming down the line, which is something that the biblical writers do. They love to create kind of these layers of like intertextual connections. And so by having Achish kind of explicitly kind of call back to the Israelites and their Exodus, and kind of the idea that they're going to become slaves now. I thought that was like a cool thing to do.
Yeah, that part of it I thought was fantastic, and kind of even not just calling forward to Jesus, but like the Jewish people to today.
Yeah,
there are still people that want to just put them down. That's their literary purpose is to be the slave or the people that are put down across time. That's what people want. People want to do that to them. You can go back to the beginning and all the way to now, and that is still why or where they are in just overall. I thought that was a powerful moment.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, Achish is almost like a proto-Hitler, like or anti-Semite of modern times. So I definitely think that exchange between them was really cool. And I liked kind of his, Achish, he has like some respect for Jonathan as a warrior, and he like, we get like a little callback to earlier scene in the book of Samuel. But, at the same time, he has this kind of, and I also love that he seems like knowledgeable of the Israelites' history. I feel like they've made him into a kind of an interesting character, not just like a total goon, or like like they've given him like this kind of interest in the Israelites, but kind of disdain for their God, and trust in kind of and force and stuff like that. So they've made him a great kind of counter example of kind of the antithesis of what we're supposed to be going for according to the show. So,
and we're going to get him for a while going forward. Yeah. So it's kind of interesting that he is this interesting even before he gets to the part where he's seemingly more interesting.
Yeah,
so I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah. So what Victor's kind of alluding to, so the two of us, we you can look on the YouTube channel, the Bible verse podcast discussions. We did kind of we gamed out how we would do a show based on some of the the story of David, but the kind of the conception of our show is that it's following David through some of his men as opposed to having David be the main character. And so some of the events that are involved in David's time in the wilderness, which is the focus of our show. David kind of goes to Achish in order to try to, get him to take him in. And like the first time he gets rejected and he has to, we won't get into all the details. And then like the second time he finally gets Achish to kind of take him in as a bodyguard or whatever. So yeah, there's definitely like a long trajectory for Achish that's going to be interesting to watch as the show unfolds. So I like, one of the things about this show that I really appreciate is they definitely are playing like the long game and like setting up Achish, setting up Eshbaal. Yeah, they're definitely like kind of thinking big picture and not just going for, okay, what do we need to do to set up the David and Goliath story? Like they're thinking several seasons ahead of.
Did you see the Variety? I think it was a Variety article or one of the trade papers, but he kind of gave out his sort of like a 6-season arc. So this season and next season, like season 2 picks up like right at the end of this episode.
That makes sense.
So it's like,
yep.
And so it's going to basically be this whole little sequence where, David ends up becoming king at the end of season 2. Season 3 and 4 are going to be David on the run, kind of like what we'd come up with. And then season 5 and 6 are going to be King David, all of his later stuff with his family and everything else that happens. So
okay,
a 6-season storyline where
that's
2 and 2 and
yeah,
2.
that's kind of what I thought. So like, yeah, season 6 will probably be like Absalom and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
Season 5 will probably get like Bathsheba, some of the heroic like good things in David's, or I don't know, maybe they'll keep everything bad for season 6. We'll have to see. Yeah, but when we did David and the Outlaws, yeah, we've only done one season so far, but we had 2 seasons of David in the Wilderness. So it'll be interesting to see if like he cuts those seasons in the same place that we do. With David going to join the Philistines is the second half. So yeah, that's cool that they're planning that much. And off the top of my head, that sounds right in terms of like the kind of the pace of the biblical material and stuff. So that it'll be interesting to see if they change actors at any point. I mean, they wouldn't need to until probably potentially like season 5 or even season 6. Yeah, that'll be interesting.
Like how much if you just cut his hair to where it's a lot shorter, will he look a lot older?
Yeah, and I mean, in terms of like, the amount of like technologies that have developed over the past couple of years, like over 6 years from now, like what they'll be able to do with aging and stuff like that. So, yeah. Okay, let's keep moving. So I know you're a big Jonathan fan, so finally got David. I mean,
finally got it.
David already met Jonathan, but it was kind of a brief meeting in the earlier episode, but we got like a real like substantial meeting between them. So what did you think of that?
I mean, this is kind of everything I was hoping it was going to be. You got to see, that Jonathan had all the information he needed at that point. So it was like any decision he was going to make in this scene was not going to be based on ignorance. It was going to be based on the fact that he knows that this is the person that's basically going to replace him or take his place. How is he going to react? And at that point, it's like he would have had as a character, he would have had every right to like, I got to take this guy down. This is my enemy. If on paper this would be my enemy, but no, he realizes this is God's anointed, and that's what I am pledged to, not to my own family's power. Yeah. And you get to see that moment, and you get to see where this friendship is going to go with them, and it just totally lands. And all the stuff that I know is coming, I can see that being born out from this scene right here.
Yeah, I agree. I thought their exchange was really great, and definitely like planting the seeds for their friendship being really like powerful relationship. So yeah, and I love how it starts off. Jonathan's just focused on David like facing Goliath and trying to kind of deal with that idea, and he has to like take in David's truth bomb about it's not about the greatness of the giant, it's about the greatness of God. And he's like kind of struggling with that, and like but yeah, but you were just like our musician recently. But then he like realizes like, oh wait, like where are you from? And David feels Bethlehem, and then that puts everything in perspective. Like he's like, oh, okay, I guess maybe he is the one who's called to do this. That makes sense that he is acting this way. But what am I thinking about that? And I love kind of the performance by Ethan Kai. I thought he did a great job with that whole sequence. And we get like a moment where like it seems like he's like not sure if he is going to accept it or whatever, but then when he ultimately does, and then he gives David kind of that key insight about you need to go for him when he's throwing the spear. That's like the key moment. So yeah, I thought just in terms of like storytelling, it was really well done. Yeah, I love that whole scene.
And Michael Iskander did. This was one of the key moments for him as a character. The entire time, is he had to portray this like there's this moment that's going to happen where he's going to be, is this somebody that I can trust?
Yeah,
is this person? I mean, he doesn't know what's going to happen, but it's like this is a person that could theoretically, I know Saul wants to kill me. No reason to believe that his son also wouldn't want to kill me. And it's like there was just a tiny fraction of a moment of like, do I answer those questions accurately, or do I try to fudge the details? But no, he's like, you can just see him. You can see it on his face. It's like, I'm going to tell exactly the truth, and that's what's going to happen. God's going to protect me, and it was just a very well acted and edited scene.
Yeah, and we've already talked about this before, but yeah, it's awesome. Just kind of like I love like kind of real good like friendships, male friendships on screen. So and in terms of like literary friendships, the friendship of Jonathan and David is a well-known one. So I'm excited to see what they do with the two characters. While we're talking about David and his close relationships, we don't have to get into all the brothers, but particularly David and Eliab. It's not like a big part of the story, but I like the decision to have like Eliab, thinking like he's gonna have to mercy kill David because like obviously my brother is gonna get torn apart by this giant, so like I don't want him to be like humiliated, tortured or mutilated or whatever. I don't know. I just like that as like kind of the ending note for his character, and then like he gets stopped by Jonathan, who's kind of the. I just thought of this, but it makes me think of the whole proverb, like there's a friend closer than a brother, that like Jonathan like got it, whereas like David's brother didn't get it until Jonathan helped out. I don't know. What did you think of?
Yeah, I liked it as of the ways that the show added not artificial tension, but tension that wasn't there in the battle, like having David be hit with a spear in the side, and of those things. This of the like, oh, is Eliab going to shoot him? That was a far more believable sort of addition that was put in there. That's something that you would do. You would kill somebody to make sure that they didn't suffer a worse death. So
I mean that shows up for other characters in the Bible. Like Saul's gonna ask someone to kill him so that he doesn't get humiliated by the Philistines. So
So I can't imagine anybody didn't know how the David and Goliath story was gonna play. But if you were one of those people, that was probably a very tense, exciting moment for you. Like, what's gonna happen?
Yeah, and at the very least, like even if you know where the story's going to end, you don't know where it's going to end for the two brothers. So
That's true.
yeah, like having him kind of come to this moment where he's like ready to kill his brother, but then like getting like taken back from that moment. Yeah, like that added tension, even if I didn't think that he was going to successfully like shoot his brother. David and Saul, anything on the two of them? I mean, they don't get like a ton, but they do have like a pretty like robust exchange when they meet. Yeah. Did you have any thoughts on?
It was all great. I mean, Ali Suleiman's performance.
Yep.
Totally. I think it's him and Samuel, or him and Stephen Lang have easily the two best performances of the season for me.
Yeah.
Because they had that. I mean, especially, but for Saul, you had to sell the fact that this was a person that at one time was God's chosen anointed king, but that he has turned into this person.
Yeah.
And you have to believe that this could be that guy that was the other person, and also the kind of the one going kind of crazy. And you get all that with that, and you believe that he trusts David, and he puts all his faith in David, and why he does that in this. Everybody else and all the other tribes leaders were like, you're nuts.
Yeah.
But you believe that he believes that David is the one that's going to do this, even though it's very ironic how it all plays out. But that's it was a great scene, except for the little fake out of go and get him or whatever that was. I thought that was a little it was a little eye rolling, but it was fun.
Yeah, and while you're mentioning kind of the elders and stuff, I feel like I love that they kind of paid off Adriel. Like that, he's a character that we've actually gotten a lot more than I necessarily expected to get him when I first like saw him in episode 1. But they've like been able to like have kind of that consistency of like a opposing force among kind of the nobles of Israel, and have like Saul come to like a pretty good moment of like opposing him for a good reason. So this is kind of Saul at probably like his highest moment that he's going to have in the show before he goes even deeper into darkness. Mychal and David. What'd you think of their romantic exchange and stuff?
Within the context of this version of the show, I thought it was fantastic. It kind of set him up for, basically, this felt very Star Wars, kiss for luck, go blow up the Death Star. He's getting ready to go do that, and it just felt like that. I mean, I've seen this scene, but it was well done by both actors, and it fit within the story. It's just just a little bit of just kind of knowing what's coming. It's like I'm curious to see how they weave all of this in to the historical biblical record.
Mychal has like been a very kind of like pure character, not talking like sexual purity, but like pure in terms of like having not a whole lot of like flaws or whatever. So they're gonna have to complicate her to get to the biblical story, but they've got some time to do that. So I did like kind of I liked how like Mychal was another way that they added tension. Like we're seeing the battle between David and Goliath, not just as like a battle between these two people for their lives, but like we're seeing it as like, the person that she loved is putting his life on the line, and if he wins, then potentially they're golden in terms of their relationship or whatever. But if he loses, then she's lost this person that she seems to care for deeply. So I like that. I liked she did kind of a remix on the Apostle Paul, about the unlikely vessels or whatever, and how the Lord uses them to show kind of the greatness on the inside or whatever. So that was like a little cool call forward thematically to ideas that get picked up in the New Testament, and that it makes sense for her to like be understanding these things because they've established her as one of the characters who's like pretty in tune with the scriptures and would like be able to kind of draw out some of these themes from previous stories and use them to build up David. So yeah, I agree with you though. It'll be interesting to see how they're able to kind of complicate their relationship in future seasons.
And just kind of going back to David and Saul again, just real quick. It's like I appreciated kind of sort of in conversation with what we were talking about with The Chosen, is that especially the scenes between Saul and David right there was a lot of word for word straight from the Bible, which I thought was very much more organically flowed
integrated
within the context. It didn't feel like it was somebody else suddenly now talking about using these words. It felt like the character from before, David saying these things is the same guy that was saying these things in front of Saul. So
yeah, that makes sense. I mean, part of that is in terms of like tone for the series, the characters are more generally like kind of talking in like a elevated kind of way.
Everything's on an epic scale.
Yeah. The Chosen is like often like trying to bring the characters down to like talk in a way that is relatable and funny, and I get why they're doing that, and that's what a lot of people love about the show. But I think it's easier for House of David to flow in and out of like the kind of exact biblical language and stuff when, like you said, it's kind of going generally for that epic tone in a lot of its characters. And what do you think of the actual battle?
I mean, we saw 90% of it at the beginning of the season. Like I say, I agree with you that it would have been nice to have all of this, seeing it for the first time at this point. But I'm sort of opposite you. I appreciate it at the beginning a lot more than you do. I understand that it's like it's just a concession you got to make to set it up. And I do think when knowing that this is coming, it does add a layer of tension for everything that happens up to that. That there's a lot more irony of like, well, that's I know how this ends, so all the stuff that Goliath is doing, it's gonna not turn out like he's thinking it is, and you know where it goes. But as far as the actual the way it played out, especially once we got past him lying on the ground with the spear wound, I was like, well, how are they gonna show that? And it was like we were talking about earlier, just he's hitting the head, Goliath's hitting the head, and it's just a long, drawn out, agonizing moment for the viewer too. Yeah, like we know what's happened. He hasn't realized it yet. And it was fun. I don't know if you watched any of the interviews with the actor that played Goliath, but he was talking about how he had to they did that in one take to where he had to completely fall forward without stopping himself. He just they had like a mat or something down there. Instead of just straight forward and just fell straight down on his head, and they got it on the first take. But that was like an iconic, the tree falling moment of that, or the tower falling. It was, this to me, this is like the iconic David and Goliath portrayal. That I'm going to think of.
Yeah. And you've already kind of pointed to this earlier, but I do like that they added tension to this moment by giving us stakes from a lot of different characters. So Eliab, we're seeing this event through his perspective, through Jonathan, through Saul and Adriel, through Mychal. I feel like that's the payoff of the way that the show has done it in setting this up over an entire season, is that this big moment, they're not just relying on it kind of the fight itself to be the what makes us kind of invested, because the fight itself is pretty quick, compared to fights that we get in other shows or whatever. But what they've done really well is give us a lot of different characters who have something invested in this moment, so that we're anticipating it, and we're just like kind of thinking about like all that this means, and that's a great way of kind of emphasizing kind of the importance of this battle. So, but yeah, in terms of the actual fight, I thought it was well done. I've already shared this on my blog and on a short, but I like that. I know some people were bothered that they had David kind of struck in the side by the spear, but I definitely think that they're trying to do like a Christ parallel. Jesus famously is stabbed in the side with the spear. So David, he kind of, it's almost like he dies and then he's kind of resurrected as Samuel kind of offers the sacrifice in his place, which is almost like a Isaac moment, the sacrifice being offered in the place of the human who would otherwise die, which is then pointing forward to the ultimate sacrifice of Jesus. And then, David is kind of resurrected. He's got blood on his hands, just like Jesus's bloody wound marks. And then he's able to triumph over kind of the satanic opponent that they've set up, hitting him in the head, which, crushing the head of the serpent. I didn't mention this in my blog, but some people have speculated that Golgotha, the hill that Jesus died on, which Golgotha means the hill of the skull, it may actually have been named after Goliath's skull, because David, he doesn't just lift that head for the moment. The Bible tells us that David actually kept Goliath's skull with him and brought it to Jerusalem when he eventually became king. And so that may, be like a little bit of a tie forward to, David's battle with Goliath kind of being a typology or event that kind of foreshadows what Jesus did in triumphing over death and Satan on the cross. So I like how they, I'm okay with them kind of adding details. And one of the points that I try to make to people is like, the Bible is not trying to give us like a play-by-play of like how these different battles played out, or even like individual fights. Like, the Bible is not like a modern novel where, you talk about like, this person slashed there and then he parried there. And, that's not just kind of the mode of what the Bible is doing. So I'm okay with them kind of adding some details that don't, it doesn't take away from the fact that David still triumphed over Goliath with the stone, the first stone, that he shot.
It would have been a problem if he'd have like thrown 3 or 4 of them and they all missed, or grazed them or whatever. Then that would have been an issue. It's like, no, he got him the first time. And that was it.
I like how you already mentioned like the Mychal David moment being a little Star Wars, and I feel like there's just like a slight nod to Star Wars with Jonathan's advice, like you have to hit him at like the exact moment. It felt kind of like the Death Star, Luke's got to hit it like right before the Death Star blows up Alderaan. So
if Samuel would have said something up on that hill, like, use centrifugal force. Or something.
But we did get like Jonathan saying, may God be with you or whatever. So that was like a little bit of like, may the force be with you. Yeah.
So real quick, what do you, going back to The Chosen, what do you think about the David scene we had in The Chosen?
Oh yeah. It's like weird, like getting a different David, like, so like, in parallel. Yeah, it was okay. It wasn't like,
Do you feel that that was a potentially them trying to do a sort of a transfiguration moment?
So that's
Sequence
what
in that?
I said in like one of my shorts is I feel like they're kind of like trying to do the transfiguration a little bit because you've got Andrew or Peter, James, and John on the mountain with Jesus, and then Jesus has a vision of ancient patriarch or whatever, and they change it from Moses and Elijah to David, in part because I think that they are one of the like kind of exchanges that they removed from Jesus's debates with the Pharisees is about how David saw the Messiah as his Lord and kind of had this foreseeing of him. So they're almost like kind of combining those things together a little bit. So like I think it's an interesting idea. It definitely doesn't fulfill all the functions of the transfiguration because we're not seeing Jesus in kind of divine glory. The disciples themselves aren't seeing it. So like I could still see potentially doing like a normal transfiguration, but I do wonder if they were kind of trying to scratch that itch like a little bit by doing that.
Yeah. I do wish, I mean, I know they couldn't have done it because they've already had a David actor in The Chosen. I don't know if that was the same guy that played David in the other
No, I
flashbacks
don't
we've
think
had.
so. I don't think so.
But it would have been neat if they would have gotten Michael Iskander just to be back for this little sequence right there.
Little Easter egg. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that would have been cool. Yeah. Yeah, because I mean, I think it's hard like to pull that off. But if we like had like an actor that some of us knew, I feel like that would have invested it with a different weight. And we also would have like been even like more sure of who it was from the get-go. Yeah.
Anyway,
Cool. Well,
season one, I thought it was I remember we were kind of hesitant going into the season. We were like, not sure what they were going to do, and I stand completely impressed by what they've done with this show.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, it's I'm really happy with I pointed out things here and there that I feel like they could have improved, but on the whole, like this is like a really successful first season, and I'm really hopeful for where the show's going to go and stuff. So, do you have any thoughts on Eshbaal before we wrap up? Or?
I mean, this is kind of the Game of Thronesy kind of thing that they're kind of trying to weave in there. Yeah. I'm curious to see where they're going with it. That's about all I have to say. It was just kind of it's interesting. See what they do with it.
Yeah. I think I've argued this other places. Like, I think there's ways to, like, I don't necessarily think that they're gonna totally throw out what the Bible does with Eshbaal coming to his kingship after Saul's death. Like, I think this might be like something that, that he tries to do and then fails and then gets pulled back. So if anyone's like freaking out that they're totally changing up the timeline, I think it might be more complicated.
It can still kind of be woven in there.
Yep. And they're playing with kind of tropes, both of like kind of this sort of story in general, but even like kind of the Book of Kings, we get some kind of usurpation and, characters like trying to take power before kind of their proper time or whatever. So I think it's like I'm for it. I think it'll be interesting. But yeah, I agree. Definitely a great start for House of David. Really excited to see where the series goes. And for all the critiques that we've done of The Chosen season 5, still really enjoying it. And it's it's still like a really epic experience. And two different kinds of threats. You've got the threat of the big, powerful, clear enemy versus the person who's supposed to be kind of the leader of the good guys, and who is very kind of conniving and also convicted, like, of their own cause, and convinced that they are seeing things the correct way, and need to step in because other people are foolish. So in my perspective, that kind of false shepherd or whatever is probably the greater threat, but not necessarily the more like, they're both really interesting characters from a dramatic standpoint. So but thanks everybody who's joined us. This has been a long broadcast. Thank you, Victor, for sticking in there. Once again, check out thebibleartist.com for reviews. I go more in depth. I give a lot of biblical references and stuff like that for both these shows, and I'll be continuing to produce more resources even after these seasons have wrapped up. We'll be back next week for Chosen Season 5, the finale. We'll be discussing that. And thanks everybody for listening. Check out Victor's book. There's a link in the description. It's really fun. But I got to get to bed. But thanks for joining. Godspeed.